Alright guys, it's a hot day in early June of 2023 and Michael and I decided to get out of the house and go for a little road trip and explore and see some cool stuff.
So what are we doing first?
We are going to the old sugar mill ruins.
Okay.
Oops, I put in the wrong address. 610.
So you see Julie's got our Pride Month little itinerary she's been working on the last few days while I was gone out of town. And we decided to do, what's this one called? Sugar Mill?
Sugar Mill Ruins. I'm not actually sure. It was part of a plantation known as the Kruger de Paster from the early 1800s and a bunch of cool shit there we want to go see.
Well, okay. So that's where we're going to start our morning.
That's where we're going first.
So we just finished leaving Wicked Pineapple. What did you get?
It's a chocolate sea salt caramel.
Yeah.
I had them without the marshmallow. I don't like marshmallow.
That's right. You don't like marshmallow at all.
This was not sugar-free by any stretch of the imagination.
I got the Irish cream, just straight up for me. I think it was nutmeg and vanilla creamer, and I don't remember what else. But so Wicked Pineapple is neat. They brew their own coffee bean. Oh yeah, Poseidon.
The coffee itself is called Poseidon.
Yeah, and it's very, very good.
It's low acidic.
Yeah, I was telling Julie, it's like the cleanest coffee, I guess, for me, because I am not a big coffee drinker. I was not a coffee anything before meeting Julie. But that it tastes very, very smooth and clean. And Julie's like, yeah, it's not acidic, so that makes sense. We got a few clouds, but it is sunny-ish right now. We're making our way up A1A. There were two ways to get to where we were going, and we decided let's take the scenic route. So we're going up to Cape Canaveral, yeah, the beach route, and then cutting over.
There's like a 40 to 60% chance of rain most of the day.
Yeah.
But that in Florida could be a torrential downpour. It could be a little sprinkles of it.
That's true. It woke us up this morning. It was such a downfall. Yeah, the rain. Downpour. You can see I need my coffee. All right. Let's continue the journey. See that? Can you see the Disney Wish over there?
So the address I was following was wrong, and this is the correct address if you're looking for the Kruger de Paster Plantation Sugar Mill Ruins. It is 600 Mission Drive. Not 610, not Old Mission Drive. It is 600 Mission Drive, New Smyrna Beach. I followed an incorrect address I had found online, and it said to drive right past some signs that say no trespassing. We started to do that and had to turn immediately around when we realized we were driving into someone's backyard. So be sure you have the right address, and this right here is what it should look like as you pull in off the highway to the actual sugar mill ruins. This is an early 19th century sugar mill that was destroyed during one of the Seminole Indian Wars. I have done a complete video walking through and showing the entire sugar mill, and I've also done a video with extensive education about the sugar mill. But this is the coquina rock that it's built out of, and that actually lent itself to this mill being mistakenly identified as remains of an old Spanish mission from the 1600s. Henry Kruger and William de Paster bought 600 acres of land here in 1830 to establish a sugar plantation. The plantation originally consisted of a sugar mill and a sawmill, both built from coquina quarried in the area. Coquina was first used by the Spanish, and it contains mollusk shell fragments and quartz sand bound together by calcium carbonate. Machinery for the mills, much advanced for the time in the area, consisted of steam-driven rollers financed by investors from New York. Unfortunately for the owners and investors, the mills and surrounding buildings were burned down by the Seminole Indians during the Second Seminole War in 1835. The plantation's own slaves aided in the raid.
They put a large piece of wood here, and the animals are drawn to the opposite ends, and then this turns and it operates the two cogwheels.
Okay, and what does that do?
Do they
crush things with it?
You have in here, yeah, it'll get milled. It gets milled and turned over. That's really neat.
Okay.
I think this one's just a taller version of that.
Look, there's a lizard on top of it.
Oh, I know.
Oh, he just disappeared. Do you know what this is?
Yeah.
What is this?
So, you see how this one has spouts? Oh, sorry, over here. Right? Okay. So, your sugar cane is going to go in over here. Right through here.
Okay.
Well, actually right here's the opening. Sugar cane goes through here. Again with your log and the animals twisting it.
That's high up though, wow.
Yeah, and your liquid sugar from the sugar cane comes out in this spout.
Interesting.
So there'll be I guess there would be a bucket under here.
Very cool.
That is.
There are still some pieces of equipment and machinery left on site today. A few of them have explanations on how they were used, but for the most part, we were just taking complete guesses trying to figure out how one makes sugar. I watched a YouTube video after I got home, and it turns out the process is a lot more complicated than I thought. I sort of thought it was kind of like corn. You go out, you pick it, maybe you clean it up a little bit, and ta-da, there you go, you have sugar. But it's a very complicated process, and this mill had, I guess you would call it state-of-the-art type equipment at its time. Unfortunately, when the plantation was ransacked, some of the equipment was destroyed. A lot of it did survive and then was later moved on to a different plantation called Dunlawton. Today, everything is fenced off with this chain, as you see, to discourage people from climbing on it. But I did read some travel blogs from way back in the day, I'm talking 40 or 50 years ago, where the bloggers were recalling childhood memories of going on school field trips to this site and being allowed to just climb all over everything. I thought that would have been a whole lot of fun, and it really would have been cool to boulder on some of these walls, but absolutely not. They don't want you climbing on the ruins, so we stayed off of them. My dog likes to eat grass. Never mind her, she's fine. I don't remember much about the sugar making process, but I do know that they lit a furnace, I think under the smallest one of these kettles, but they started out in the biggest kettle and they just continued to render it down into smaller and smaller and smaller kettles until it got to the very end, and that was your sugar. In the process, it made a syrupy liquid. I guess that would be like molasses, and then you could turn around and use that in things like rum. So it was really cool that they still had some of the full-size kettles here, and they're full of rainwater, dirty rainwater, as you can see, but I thought that was really neat to actually see how big these kettles were. When I had heard that you made sugar in kettles, I was, envisioning like a small kettle like you put on an oven or on top of the stove to make your tea or whatever. This sign just says that this piece of iron here was probably from the sawmill on this site, and it's unclear why it was left behind. The sugar and sawmill equipment that survived the Seminole War was largely collected and then relocated some 10 or 20 years later to another plantation known as Dunlawton Plantation. That was about a 20-minute drive, and that's where we went next. Very hot, very cool though. Dunlawton Plantation is another antebellum sugar mill. It has a long and sad history also of being destroyed in one of the Seminole Wars. Actually, I think it got destroyed 2 times in the Second and Third Seminole Wars. It sat neglected several times over the years, and eventually in the 1940s turned into a cute little children's park that had some dinosaurs made out of chicken wire and cement. That for me was the main attraction and why I wanted to go. In fact, that was kind of the initial pin I dropped to create today's entire road trip around. I really just wanted to see these statues, which are now at least getting close to 80 years old. There's 4 left. a giant sloth, and then 3 dinosaurs. But the plantation itself has been turned into a beautiful botanical gardens, and I have done several videos that will be coming out soon on the sugar mill itself, the dinosaur park, and then just walking through and enjoying the plants and flowers. So those videos will be coming out, but for now I'm just going to show you an abbreviated version of what is here at the Dunlawton plantation that turned into the park called Bongo Land and is now Volusia County's beautiful botanical gardens. This next stop is the Port Orange train depot. It was a drive-by find. I had no idea we were going to be coming across something like this. I found it so interesting, I made a video on it, which will be coming out soon, but long story short, it was due to a man named Henry Flagler, who was a bit frustrated by how difficult train travel was in Florida in the 1800s, and in the early 1900s was setting about making depots accessible for passengers as well as for freight and cargo. At this point, we drove on up to the southern side of Daytona, and we were thirsty, so we were looking for a cold kombucha somewhere. We found this place called The Porch. I waited outside with Abra, but then they told me to go ahead and come on inside the air conditioning, that Abra was welcome. They had some Big Dog kombucha on their draft, as well as kombucha from other places around Florida, and they actually offered a flight, so we were able to sample 4 different types. Which one's your favorite?
I think the guava.
Really? The pink guava, the last one? It's
and the
very
lemonade.
fruity.
I like the lemonade too. Very, very tart.
Apple cinnamon.
That's
Apple
your
cinnamon
jam?
is my favorite, yep. They even gave us little biscotti biscuits as like a palate cleanser, which Michael and I don't eat those, but Abra loved them, so we actually fed them to her. The Porch was a great find, highly recommend, and we will definitely go back if we're ever in the area. Our next stop was a place called Manatee Island Loop. It is a little island right off the coast, and you reach it by this little bridge. I misunderstood. I thought when I looked it up online that it was a gigantic island that was one complete dog park, but no part of it is fenced in. So we kept Abra on the leash just in case. We weren't sure if there might be alligators or anything. We did not see any manatees that day. It was really hot, so maybe they were sluggish, but we had a really good time. We walked the entire loop, which I believe was about half a mile, and just got a chance to stretch our legs and enjoy the rest of our kombucha. This park is so breezy, being surrounded by flowing, moving water, and it's really shady, and frankly, the shade and the coolness was such a relief after the long and hot day we had had out adventuring so far. We really appreciated it, and we kind of lingered here for a little bit. In fact, Michael even carried Abra back across the bridge because we weren't sure, now that she'd cooled down, if that pavement might be a little hot on her little feet. Next, we drove south down the barrier islands to the Ponce Inlet Lighthouse. This was something I did all by myself. Dogs are not allowed inside this unless, of course, they're service animals, but even still, I'm not sure that would be a safe or a good idea. So Michael and Abra stayed at the little park at the base of the lighthouse in the shade and played with some sticks and toys while I climbed to the top of this lighthouse. I'm not going to put the footage of me climbing in this video because I did a separate video doing an educational on the entire lighthouse from top to bottom. So this will just be a little look at it real quick. There is also a museum on site that has a pretty large collection of lanterns that have been used in lighthouses over the years. I didn't find this particularly interesting, but they are beautiful, so I did enjoy looking at them. But they have quite a collection, a whole little brick house dedicated just to lighthouse lanterns. By this point, both of us were hungry, so we decided to Google what is the best pizza place in the area, and that's how we came upon this place. This was the best rated pizza around. I let Michael pick a pizza place while I climbed the lighthouse tower, and this is what he chose. I'm gonna give it a chance, and we're gonna take it to a park and eat it since we got the dog with us, and she can't go in there, so.
They have a pickle pizza. Oil, garlic, dill pickles, and dill weed.
No. Oh man, I already forgot.
I'm trying to look it up.
Spruce something is a family campground, so I'm hoping there'll be a picnic area we can get to and hopefully not have to pay. I think that'd be awesome to eat outside. We don't do that much. Michael went to Spruce Creek Park. Michael went to a Circle K and got some drinks. I still have water, but he didn't have any, so oh, my scars. He went to pick us up some drinks so we could have a little outdoor picnic, which is going to be really fun. It's been a long time since I've had a picnic. Change of plans, we decided not to stay overnight. We actually got a call from the hotel where we had booked Eileen Warnos's room, and there was a screw up making the reservation, so we just decided to scratch it and maybe do that another day, but I'm still hoping we can at least drive by and look at it. So, but I'm thinking, Michael and I got to talking about how many serial killers have either been on a spree in Florida or been caught in Florida or had victims in Florida. Maybe that would be a fun thing to do since we're such true crime fans.
Yeah,
to go on like a little scavenger hunt road trip. So
journey.
Since we've decided not to stay overnight and go back home, which I hope isn't a bummer to anybody, but we got to thinking we'd probably rather sleep in our bed than a little motel.
Biker motel.
So maybe we'll do a road trip at another point, and we, Ted Bundy was down here. Florida's got some massively interesting serial killer history. So, but we're gonna at least do a drive by and see it. So I'm excited about that. Oh, look at this thing! Focus, focus. The size of this wasp. Look how big that is on our windshield.
Everything's bigger in Florida.
Florida's got some crazy big bugs. Look at the size of this pizza box. What size did you get?
18.
18 inch?
I didn't play around.
Wow. Oh, check this out. Wow. This makes it look like you're the pineapple person.
I know. Let me change that. Heavy pizza.
That's more like it. Next, we drove over to a little motel known as the Scoot Inn, which used to be known as the Fairwood Motel, and this is the last known residence of Eileen Warnos. I've done a video on her coming out towards the middle of August where we talked about where she lived and where she was arrested and her crime spree. But for now, this is a little peek inside the motel room that she and Tyria called home. They had moved out or been evicted shortly before Eileen's arrest because they were no longer making payments on their stay, and so we are going to just assume that she was homeless at the time she was arrested. Then we made our way over to this place. This is the Last Resort Bar. It's kind of a motorcycle themed bar. It's well under half a mile from the motel. This is the place where Eileen was actually arrested in 1991. In case you can't tell, Eileen Warnos is my favorite serial killer, and I was really excited to see some sites that are, famously associated with her, and then also with the movie that they made in 2002 about her, which is grossly inaccurate, but still a pretty emotionally compelling movie. This bar is a mess. They don't even seem to use the inside anymore, but the doors were wide open, so we walked in expecting, to walk up to a bartender. Nope, it just seems to be a place to store a bunch of clutter and crap, but there was kind of a little party kicking off in the back with a bartender, probably the owner. It looked like the guy who owned the bar might have been back there. and a couple other patrons, but we decided just to look around and leave and not engage with anybody. We just didn't want to disturb their party. But here you go. This is a look inside the bar where she spent her last night as a free woman and drank her last beer. Then we made our way over to New Smyrna to this place called the Old Fort Archaeology Park. It's actually a sort of little known, maybe only known to the locals or archaeology professors, people, students. But it is probably the ruins of an old Spanish fort that has been repurposed into several things over time. There was a Scottish physician who immigrated here with a whole bunch of slaves and indentured people in the 1600s, I believe, and he may or may not have set up his camp here or even built a home on top of it. It was a hotel at one point. It's been misidentified, and actually it's recently undergone an archaeology study. So we're hoping to get some answers on the true origins of this place, how old it is, what it was originally built for, who originally built it, who deserves credit for the site of this thing. Michael and I are not archaeologists by any means, but we have a newfound amateurish interest in archaeology, thanks to having watched Ancient Apocalypse by Graham Hancock on Netflix. And so now we find things like this a lot more interesting than we used to, now that we are wondering what the true origins of some of the amazing megalithic and stone structures throughout the world may be. This here may be no older than the, say, 1500s, but it was really neat to see it up close and personal. It's a little hairy to be walking on top of it because that's a long way down to fall to the bottom, but if you're careful, you are more than welcome to climb all over these ruins. There are no signs to say that you can't, and paths to help you, stairs, steps. Dogs are welcome as long as they're on a leash, and all they ask is that you be respectful of the property and not damage it. So we had a really good time checking all of this out. I have done a few videos on this that will be coming out later where I talk about everything I learned about it with a complete timeline. But the cool thing about this site is it really is shrouded in a lot of mystery, and a lot of people are guessing what they think they know, but we don't have any actual scientific answers yet. So it'll be really neat to see in the years coming forward what kind of articles are put out about the findings of this archaeology study that they're currently doing. There is a little park in front of these ruins, and there's a museum, but we were there on a Friday evening after the museum had closed, so we weren't actually able to go in and see what they had on display. But they should have at least a lot of information if anyone's at this park. But we just enjoyed a couple flowers and then moved on with our day. The last place that we visited on this day was advertised online as the grave in the middle of the street, which is actually a little misleading because the grave was here long before the street, and the street was actually forced to be paved around it. This is one of those sites that to me was deserving of a standalone video all its own, and it will be coming out soon. This is the grave for a teenage boy named Charles Dummett, who was tragically killed in a hunting accident in 1860, shortly before the American Civil War. Charles was the son of a plantation owner and a mixed-race woman that the plantation owner was married to. They had 4 children together, and Charles was the youngest and their only son. The father was so distraught at the loss of his only son that he buried him right where his body was found. The cement dog on top of the grave was added at a later date by an unknown artist. Unfortunately, it was a little too windy for you to hear what I was trying to say to Michael in this video. I do believe in leaving a coin on a tomb if you visit it and have a connection to the spirit that you feel. Generally, pennies are reserved to be laid on the tomb of a soldier, specifically if you have served in a war, which of course I have not, and neither did Charles. But a penny was the only coin that I had this day, the only thing I had I could leave. But I was thinking that it would be interesting to know if, had Charles not been killed in this hunting accident, would he have gone on to serve in the American Civil War, which started shortly after his death. Another interesting thing about this tomb is that it was attempted to be entered in the early 1900s, and reportedly there were no signs of a body inside this tomb. We'll never know if that's rumor or if that is true. However, with the number of tropical storms and hurricanes that Florida gets, it's not entirely uncommon for a grave to be destroyed, especially an above ground grave. It's not clear if this grave has always been above ground or if the ground has kind of eroded away around it. We'll never know, but it is an interesting thing to think about. And after that, we headed home. We had a great time today out on our road trip, and so many of these things were so highly interesting to me. I'm going to actually be releasing videos for the next several weeks about a deep dive into the history behind some of these super cool places that we saw today. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed.